So I wanted to do a quick download on soul contracts. This is something that y'all have heard me talk about quite a bit. If you have been aligning with my platform and my messaging for some time, you will have heard me talk about soul contracts. And I really want to make sure that I get to the nitty gritty of what my experience has been with them. I have worked with folks before who have had like a logical sense of what soul contracts were, but it took a while for it to like really hit home and become real within their reality. And I've actually had that same experience before too. Like I remember reading about soul contracts and knowing that that was a thing, but not really understanding the way they were impacting my world and my reality. And that was something that took a while for my rational mind to catch up with like what my intuition and what my inner guidance was attempting to show me. And when I did finally kind of catch on to it, and what the gravity of releasing myself from soul contracts and how it could really shift my reality, it really was a game changer for me. Okay. That being said, I've been compiling information as it relates to this for quite some time. I've been working with folks one on one in client coaching sessions as it relates to revoking soul contracts. And then I've also been sharing quite a bit of information on the Patreon, specifically on the holographic rose tier of the Patreon. There's a collection right now related to revoking soul contracts. But it's been leading me up to this moment, to the release of the Soul Contract Revocation Toolkit. So if you have been aligning with my work on Patreon, you've been seeing bits and pieces of it, but I finally put it together in a comprehensive compilation. And I feel confident that this is a great starter kit for anybody who is looking to relinquish soul contracts that are no longer in alignment with the version of you that you are transmuting yourself into. Okay, so one thing that we do when we're in this false matrix simulation, and we wake up to the fact that this is a simulation that we are residing within, we start understanding the web work, the toxic web work that we've been enmeshed in, that has kept us on certain loops, kept us feeling trapped, kept us from a feeling of freedom within our world and our reality. Okay. And in order to embody freedom, it does require looking at any fine print that we have been holding ourselves up to, either consciously or subconsciously, a lot of times. Okay. And that's going to be done through accessing your Akashic records and learning about the soul contracts that are running within your field. Okay, so there are two specific resources that I'm going to highlight today that can support you with your soul contract revocation journey. So I mentioned earlier that there is an ebook slash toolkit related to revoking soul contracts that you can access. So you can click on the links below and dive into that, right? And so that will consist of a subliminal, that will consist of a variety of different contract revocations, revoking soul contracts with individuals, with institutions, with egregores and thought forms, etc., etc. Okay, and different karmic soul contracts as well. So there will also be suggestions of rituals that you can participate in to support with aligning with the earth or with Terra, as I'm kind of more evolving into calling this landmass that we are living on. That is a living, breathing life essence. Earth is more of an enslavement construct, but I'm aligning with the vibration of Terra, which was what the land was known as before she got caught up in her own soul contracts and her own forms of entrapment. Okay, so as we free ourselves, we also free the land. Okay, so working with the land to revoke soul contracts, I have found has been really powerful. It's helped me to connect more with the nature kingdom and more with my innermost self, and it's also helped me to see things more from an ecological approach and decentering humanity in the process. Sometimes, like, we as human beings, we get too caught up in ourselves and we forget that we are sharing an existence with many, many different creatures who have consciousness. Okay, and we can help them and they can help us. Okay, so I definitely approach soul contract revocation from a holistic approach, decentering humanity and freeing not just my consciousness but the consciousness of the land that I reside on. Okay, and so more of that information can be found within that toolkit for you to download. Now, another thing to support you, a lot of times the questions I get is like, well, how do I know if I have a soul contract, right? So you want to be able to access your Akashic records to do that. There are meditations that you can tap into to kind of see what different programs are running within your field. If you're interested in some of those specific meditations around certain soul contracts that need to be released or alchemized, there's lots of that on Patreon. There's a whole meditations playlist that you can tap into, right? To support you with kind of getting the sensory approach of the soul contracts that you will need to revoke and clear within your field. But another kind of more 3D way, like a way to merge the 3D with the multidimensional approach, is through the Genetic Path Cutter Oracle deck. Okay, this is a DIY divination system. If you're interested in learning more about this deck, I will post some information below. And this is a really great way to see what needs to be alchemized within your field, what karmic storylines need to be alchemized within your field. In this guide, I give you almost 400 keywords to support you with creating your own deck, as well as information on how to ground, how to channel in the energies, and how to really work with accessing your Akashic records and working with your ancestors and your innermost self to create your own form of gnosis. So it's a guideline, but it's not stagnant, and it's not a closed divination system. It's an open divination system, and I share with you some of the strategies that I have utilized, which have really supported me on my path. Okay. Now, there's a lot of different cards related to different agreements that might be within your field that you might need to alchemize, okay? And I'm going to discuss two of them today. There's many other types of agreements, and I think that's why, I've been working on this toolkit for quite some time, y'all. First I did it within myself. I had to go on my own journey within myself to access certain things. And I now feel like I've gotten into like a full circle place where I feel comfortable releasing the totality of what I've learned, at least a beginner's guide within this toolkit. And, I had to do a lot of my own alchemy on my journey. So this is, I always like to, the way I see my services and what I offer to the community at this time is shortcuts, and not in a way of like being sloppy and that sort of thing, but just like life hacks in the spiritual realm. If you are really working on freeing yourself from a lot of the constructs, which can feel really heavy and burdensome, and just things that have worked to make life easier. I said it before and I'll say it again. Life should be easy. We should be in flow. And if we're not, let's alchemize it. Okay. So with that being said, let's talk about two cards within the Genetic Path Cutter deck, which would support you on your alchemy process as it relates to transmuting, transforming, transcending soul contracts. So the first card that we're going to get into from the Genetic Path Cutter Oracle deck related to soul contracts and learning and discerning the ones that you might need to clear out of your field and out of your Akashic records. One is a falsified agreement. Let's talk about it. This has no basis. If you get this card, if you get this energy in your field, there's no basis for this agreement to be in your field. It is falsified paperwork. It's a forgery in a lot of ways. There are energetic forgeries. So as within, so without. So just like we have experiences of fraud on the physical plane, there's fraud on the spiritual plane. Okay, so as above, so below, as within, so without, all those little isms, right, that we discussed. So let's talk about a falsified agreement. So it's basically a forged signature. There's an agreement in your field that has no basis, that is not something you actually agreed to, but there has been a construct or an egregore or an entity or a being, what have you, which has forced this agreement within your field. And there has been some spell work, I guess you would say, which has been done to make it look like this is something you've consented to and that has a basis in your field, okay? And so a lot of times, in order to get rid of this falsified agreement, number one, you need to know that it's there. Number two, you need to remove your energetic signature from this falsified agreement, okay? So these are just things you just want to just it's just like a cleanup. It's a form of energetic hygiene, you know, because if you have falsified agreements in your field and you're subconsciously consenting to them because you're just like letting them stay in your field, then it's leading you within a certain storyline or life track that's not meant for you. So you want to get rid of these things and send it back to the source of origin. Okay, so that's one type of soul contract that you're looking to clear. So when folks ask me like, well, how do I know what kind of soul contracts are there? Like, I would just say an easy way is the genetic path cutter deck to just kind of find. You'll see a variety of different ones. You know, there's been some gnarly ones that took me a while to learn about, but once I did and kind of got a little bit more understanding of certain things, it helped some really stuck patterns. Like, I don't know if y'all have had an experience where like, there was something going on in your reality where you're like, there's no basis for this. Why won't this go away? Why can't I alchemize it? It's usually because of like some fuckery that's happening in the spiritual realm, okay? And we kind of know that already, but like, let's get to the nitty gritty. Like, what kind of fuckery, so I can transmute it, right? And be the alchemist and be the magi of my reality. So falsified agreements, that's one. I'm going to talk about another one, which is kind of interesting. This is when you got to start playing around with time. Okay, you got to like really understand that yes, the time is now, and yet there are different versions of ourselves in the past, in the present, in the future, multidimensional versions of ourselves. Okay, so sometimes what can happen is that you might have a future agreement in your field for something, and then a karmic encounter with somebody or an institution or what have you will trigger a future agreement, will trigger a future version of yourself to be in the mix. Okay, this does require you to see things from a multidimensional lens. Like, this won't make sense to you if you don't see yourself as a multidimensional being. Okay, and so if there is, and what the reason why this will happen is if there is a person or a being in your life that can open up a time portal. If there are, there's a lot of time magic, time sorcery. There's a reason why Saturn is associated with not just curses, but time. Okay, so there are a lot of curses and hexes related to time. And the confusion of knowing what timeline you're in and kind of mixing it up and boggling it up can actually keep you in a state of stagnancy or twisted in time. Okay, so what you want to do is, if you are feeling stuck or stagnated within a certain reality that you're experiencing, or a karmic circumstance or karmic storyline, there might be like a future agreement that's activated. And if you are not in alignment with that, then you can clear all agreements, past, present, and future. Okay. And one thing, I was actually talking about this with a client like a few weeks ago, and she shared with me that she actually was working with her guidance around, because this also can be the same as it relates to karma too. And one interesting thing that she shared with me is that her guidance shared with her that she can actually clear future karma, past, present, and future karma simultaneously, which was like a really cool light bulb moment for me. So that's something else. Sometimes future karma will be enacted, So I like to really clear agreements and karma within the same workings that I do, just to kind of clear the pathway multidimensionally. So if time portals do get opened up, like that's already been, my path is already clear as it relates to that. So yeah, those are just two examples. We got the falsified agreements and we got the future agreement. These are just two examples of the ways that soul contracts can be within your reality. Okay, and we want to clear things energetically and it becomes a lot easier to make our material reality more malleable, okay? Because the material reality, the material world as it is now, is very dense. And a lot of times it's dense because of all these like icky agreements and stuff that we don't know that we've consented to, but they're manipulating our reality. So if we call a spade and see what's actually in front, of our faces multidimensionally, then we become the alchemists of our reality, okay? And then we are a lot more free to move around. And that this stuff is working is if you have more freedom in your day. Ideally, you should be able to be calling the shots on exactly what you want to do every day. Literally waking up and being like, what do I want to do today? What do I want to create today? And being able to do those things and create those things. Life should be easy, y'all. And revoking soul contracts, clearing soul contracts, vows, oaths, and agreements out of alignment with your freedom is really the game. That's the name of the game, okay? So we are moving into 2025 as I record this. I'm recording this at the end of 2024. This is a really great time of reflection. We're in this really interesting Saturnian energy during the winter time, checks and balances. What is heavy? What's too heavy for us to carry into the next season? I don't really go by the Gregorian calendar as much anymore, but I do go by the seasons, okay? And winter is really a time where I like to take stock and inventory and do some cleaning up and some long-term planning and visioning. And so this is a really great time to get into clearing soul contracts. All right. So if you are interested in any of the resources described earlier in this recording, then check out the links below. Or if you're interested in a deep dive, really having somebody work with you one-on-one for a longer period of time, whether that be 3 months, 6 months, or 9 months, then connect with me and inquire about my one-on-one coaching packages. All right. Sending y'all lots of love, joy, and peace. Until we meet again. Bye, y'all.